All right, welcome back, everybody. Another video from Orbital. This week, we're going to talk about the winners and the losers of NBA free agency. Now, everything's pretty calmed down, but there's still a couple guys, most named Hassan Whiteside, who hasn't really been signed yet. So I would assume we're still in some more progress left to happen here in free agency. But we're going to talk about winners and losers. So, Rourke, let's start on the high note of winners. Who's someone that you definitely have, or maybe it's a couple teams. Who do you have as winners for NBA free agency so far?
Well, there are many teams I think you can choose from. I do want to highlight. I think the Lakers had pretty solid offseason so far. Hometown Rockets. I think they put out a pretty good offseason so far. I also like the Atlanta Hawks. Just to name a few teams that I want to highlight. What about you? What other teams did you recognize that you thought had a good free agency start so far?
For sure. I mean, I think without a doubt, Portland Trailblazers, their offseason is not going to get talked about enough, mostly because they didn't make a whole bunch of acquisitions, but I thought the ones that they did were really strong, mostly Enes Kanter and Robert Covington. I thought those are two really strong places that they needed improvement, right? They lose Hassan Whiteside, but get Enes Kanter on a way cheaper deal, right? And he fits a more he fits a position that they need. You know, when Nurkic goes out of the game or needs subbed in, you have Enes Kanter coming in and giving you offense off the bench. It feels like forever since he was with the Portland Trailblazers, but it was only like 2 seasons ago that he was right down there. We all remember how good he was, especially in the playoffs when Nurkic went down. So I think he'll be a great addition. And then also getting Covington, who's a huge upgrade over Trevor Ariza, right? Both are Trevor Ariza is always going to be labeled as that veteran presence, but Covington also can provide that. And being a guy who's a better shooter and a better defender, arguably, on the perimeter and in the post, I think he's going to be an amazing addition for that team. I see Portland, they did a really great job this last year. If they didn't meet the Lakers, they could have even made the second round, but I see them as easily making the second round of the playoffs. If they're lucky, if they get hot the right time, maybe they could even make a conference finals, depending on how the other teams perform. But I think Portland made a huge addition. Now, you went over 3 teams in particular. I'll let you kind of cover. This is more of a Rockets-focused podcast. So what did you think about the Rockets offseason?
All right. Well, first off, Portland making it past the second round, I guarantee you that does not happen. There's no chance of that happening with the competition in the West now. But I will say that the Rockets, definitely after the dismal outlook going into free agency on the Rockets organization as a whole, starting from their coaching changes and their coaching staff, all the way down, all the players, down to the best players, Harden and Westbrook, going through this trade turmoil that, he likes to always float around whenever, free agency first opens up, try to create some buzz going on what could potentially happen. But it looks like there's no way the Rockets are going to let go of Harden and Westbrook. And you can consider that a win when you just look at it from the standpoint of going into free agency, what a lot of people are saying about the Rockets. And, telling people, stay calm. And there's no way we're going to trade away any of those 2 major pieces unless we're getting that kind of an asset back right now. We're not going to this rebuilding stage with LeVert, Dinwiddie, and 5 picks. That just doesn't make sense. But I do think that aside from that, with our acquisitions of Christian Wood, we are making some good progress in terms of addressing the major issues people have with the Rockets from the standpoint of our bigs. I don't like the fact that we let go of Rocco, as you highlighted with Portland. I think that's a great pickup for them. I do see why we did it, and we get some extra cash, and we made some other moves, like the Rockets, to get some extra cash and make some more deals. What did you think about the Rockets? Do you like our acquisition so far, what we got going on? Obviously, DeMarcus Cousins, too, we haven't highlighted, but I was thinking that you could kind of talk about that.
Absolutely. And, even though he is, we're never going to see, 25 and 12 DeMarcus Cousins ever again. If we do, it's severely unlikely, right? Mm-hmm. But getting a guy that is a veteran and, when we first saw that notification, I was talking to you and Ayers, and, my first thought was that locker room is just going to be an absolute mess, right? Between Westbrook, Cousins, and then James Harden, kind of the more aloof of all 3 of those. It seemed like a recipe for disaster, or at least something you wouldn't, think it wouldn't be the first preference. But I think DeMarcus Cousins on the Rockets has it feels like a very low floor, high ceiling kind of move
Yeah.
where you're going to get a guaranteed post scorer. I don't know how he's going to be on defense with the injuries he's had to his lower extremities in the past couple of years, but he apparently, according to his workout, he looked amazing and looked healthy, ready to go. So I don't think it's a losing situation to sign DeMarcus Cousins. And then also your boy Gerald Green is back on the Houston Rockets as of this week. So I think that's another dub. I don't think he's going to end up playing a whole bunch, but having him back on the team, I think, is a move in the right direction. I would see Ben McLemore playing more over him, which is, if you asked me that when we signed Ben McLemore last year, I think I'm on camera saying that there's no way Ben McLemore plays over Jalen Green. But now I'm gonna completely flip flop on that a year later. Say Ben McLemore probably plays a lot more minutes. What were your thoughts? Rockets didn't make a whole bunch of moves, but again, they make moves that show an effort to address the areas they needed to address, right? Big men, shooting, and really offensive side of the basketball. What were your kind of thoughts? Do you think they could have done more, or are you happy with what they did?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're still in the progress of our free agency, and I think you kind of downplayed our role and pickup with Gerald Green and DeMarcus Cousins in that one. I think DeMarcus Cousins is a player that gets a lot of hate in terms of, you said having those three in the locker room is a recipe for disaster, but I think it's almost the opposite in terms of you take a guy like DeMarcus Cousins, Carmelo Anthony, that these players get depicted as not being good locker room guys, as being toxic due to, I guess, their selfish personality or whatever strings are attached to them by the media. But a lot of players come out and say guys like Carmelo and guys like DeMarcus Cousins are great to have in the locker room, and they're great friends. And you can see how a star talent like DeMarcus Cousins, he has a lot of good friends in the NBA. When he made, the All-Star a couple of years ago, he is definitely well acquainted with playing with stars already. And then you take into account James Harden and Westbrook, who have been great best friends, growing up playing in California when they were kids. So I don't think that there's going to be any issue inserting DeMarcus Cousins, especially because he knows he's not going to have a huge role. So I don't think he's going to take on, that this selfish, like, demand the basketball that, a la Howard did back when it was Harden and Howard. I don't think you're going to see any type of turmoil based on getting DeMarcus Cousins involved. But he will be there, like you said, high ceiling. If he is contributing, is getting the ball, it's going to be interesting to see how we space the floor, because why we got rid of Capella was to open up the floor for Westbrook and Harden. And we saw Westbrook play a lot better when there was not another center sitting in the paint waiting for him. So with Cousins, how much playing time, rolls out from this, I think the offense is going to look a little different. But I think all three of them will definitely be able to not only play together, but get along well. Gerald Green, obviously a fan favorite of Houston, personal fan favorite, of course. Love that guy. Got the green light. Oh, man, I hope he can still shoot. He broke his foot. That's why we lost him, let him go. So you would think, the form is still there. That guy, I love his confidence, and I would love for him to get involved on the Rockets. I do agree with you. McLemore has cemented the six-man role, sharpshooter, almost exactly like Gerald Green was for our team before. But I still think, you're a good shooter. You're going to get minutes on the Rockets, especially during the long regular season. So I love that. I know we're talking a lot about the Rockets, but I don't think there are any big moves for Rockets to make. Like I said, they're not going to be dealing Westbrook or Harden unless you're getting a serious asset back, and that's just not realistically going to happen. So I think that we're making little minor tweaks here. I like it. Honestly, I would have preferred just to run back the same unit we had last year. We had the best defense in the bubble. I think the small ball lineup actually worked. And I know I'm in the minority when I say that, but I would have preferred to keep Rocco. But I still like the squad we got. You want to move on to another team?
Yeah. I kind of want to talk about the Phoenix Suns, who I think are not. They're going to get talked about a lot because Chris Paul and what he did last year with the Oklahoma City Thunder and really taking that young team to the playoffs. When everyone said, "Oh, that team is rebuilding. Chris Paul's going to Miami. He's going to get released or something." They're not going to go anywhere, and then they end up making the playoffs and taking the Rockets to 6 games. So I really think that Phoenix is going to make the playoffs this year. You think about what they did in the bubble without Kelly Oubre, who is someone that they do lose in free agency, but Devin Booker, Chris Paul, Also getting Jay Crowder, who, he has been talked about on NBA podcasts and NBA coverage about his contract, 30 mil over 3 years. You get him at a discount, and take him away from the Miami Heat. Now, Jay Crowder, and you'll hear this from anyone else, he will go back and forth. You don't know which one you're really getting. If you're getting the guy in Miami that's just a lights out shooter and a great defender, then I can see Phoenix making the playoffs this year. But if he, is someone who is inconsistent or inefficient from the 3-point line, then I think also having Chris Paul and Devin Booker, they can probably subsidize that a little bit better. But I think Jay Crowder, I don't know why, but every single year, whenever he goes to a team, he takes them from being like maybe they're good to, okay, now I know they're definitely good with Jay Crowder. I don't know if he takes I don't know if he takes a team from being good to great, but he definitely always takes a team from being decent to being good. What did you think about what the Phoenix Suns did?
No, I definitely like the Phoenix Suns. However, I do think that they're really going to feel the loss of Oubre. Like you said, they didn't have him in the bubble when they popped off, so it's almost like, okay, whatever, it's fine. But Oubre was instrumental for their team in scoring during the regular season. But I mean, you could say, hey, they didn't play that well, whatever. But he was one of their best players. I would say the second best behind Booker. I think he's better than Ayton. And I think you're going to see that he's going to flourish this year on his way out from Phoenix. So with that said, you bring in Chris Paul, who is a playoff machine. He just gets his team ready, locked and loaded to win games. And I think that you take the experience that Booker's got now and another year for DeAndre Ayton. Hopefully he doesn't get banged up like he did last year, and you can kind of have a healthy unit around there. I think that they got a solid squad. They got a bunch of other kind of young guys who are, developing. So I do think that the Suns could easily slip in to playoff contention. Jay Crowder, I don't really know, if he plays well, if he doesn't play well, how much that's really going to affect the performance of the Suns, but he is a good role player in assisting their strong unit that they've got now with, Book, Chris Paul, and DeAndre Ayton.
I think he's a great player just to have alongside Devin Booker, right? A guy that can play defense, which isn't Booker's strong suit, who can like knock down an open three when it's tossed out to him. And he can take on the best offensive player that the other team has, whether he's your best option or not. I think he's really solid there. But listen, not everyone has an amazing free agency, which is why I want to talk a little bit about people who probably could have done a better job, to say the least. And for me, number one is the Detroit Pistons. Whether it's contracts they gave out or just positions that they tried to fill, the offseason doesn't really make sense to me. You give Jerry Grant, I believe it's either 20 or 30 mil a season. And Jeremy Grant is a guy that I think everyone says that he's underrated. He's underrated. He is slowly creeping into the area of underrated, where he's now overrated because everyone thinks he's underrated, right? And so him getting a huge contract, say with the Pistons, I think it's too much money. 20, 30 mil, whatever he is, and either one of those is a little too much than what I think he's worth for a power forward. And then also signing Mason Plumlee, Jahlil Okafor, Josh Jackson, and it seems like they didn't really go out and get the guys that are going to help stretch the floor. Jeremy Grant's the only guy on that list who can really space the floor. They also released Zaire Smith, who they acquired. They also got DeLon Wright to be a backup point guard, or maybe a starting point guard next to Killian Hayes and Sadiq Bey, who they got in the draft. Detroit's overall offseason just makes no sense to me at all. I don't know if they're rebuilding or if they're trying to contend. What did you think about the moves that they made?
Yeah, John, I definitely agree with you that the Detroit Pistons were one of the biggest losers so far in free agency. Only because, I just don't know the direction of what they're trying to do with franchise. They've got a lot of moving pieces, some incoming parts that are questionable free agent pickups. And then some of their best players, not really panning out to expectations and how that's going to play out. They're going to be losing some key players. You don't know what the future. Obviously, you got Derrick Rose, Blake Griffin, guys that you thought were the best players on the Detroit Pistons. Obviously, they already lost Andre Drummond. You brought in Reggie Jackson. These are your big free agent acquirers. And now it's like those guys don't seem involved in the face of the franchise, right? It's like, what's the direction? Who are they building off of now? They got Cole Anthony, right? Didn't they get Cole Anthony?
No, no.
No,
I think Orlando got him.
oh yeah,
Even
yeah,
Orlando got him. Like they got Killian Hayes. That's their
yeah.
that's their point guard
Yeah.
of the future, the sixth one in like the past like 5 years. Yeah.
So I agree with you. Yeah, I just don't really know what's going on. A controversial team I want to switch to. Some people are calling them losers. Some people are calling them winners. Um, Atlanta Hawks.
That's an
Now,
interesting one. What side are you on that one?
I think that they have been doing pretty well so far to start out
I would say
the
the same.
free agency. A team that is at the bottom of the East, really young squad, bright future ahead with the likes of Trey Young, John Collins, Herter. I think that they need to bring in some good experience and well talented and well experienced players to their squad. And that's exactly what they've done so far. And they've received nothing but hate for it, mainly because of their big contracts. You bring in guys like Gallinari, who I think is the main reason a lot of people are disliking the Hawks. But what do you think about some of their acquisitions they brought in? What side are you on for the Hawks?
I agree with you. I think they need to bring in those guys. They have a young group. They need to bring in the veterans. Yeah, Gallo. I mean, they're going to overpay. That's what Atlanta is, right? They don't have it. I mean, Trey Young is on his way to being a superstar. No one's doubting that. John Collins could easily be an all-star caliber big if he puts the right numbers and they're winning. But they don't really have like historically they're not a big market. Even though Atlanta is like an awesome city to live in, they're not a huge free agent destination historically. So overpaying for Gallinari, overpaying for Rondo, I can see how that might, shake a couple people off the bandwagon there. And then Bogdan going there, he probably got a little more money than he probably would have otherwise. But when you're Atlanta, you have to overpay for those guys. And I think they have a squad. I think Trey Young, John Collins, Onyeka Okongwu, Cam Reddish, Kevin Herter, now Bogdan and Gallo and Rondo, and even Chris Dunn. Chris Dunn, I've heard everywhere he's not going to play a whole bunch, but his defense is terrific. He is one of the best defenders at a guard position that you can have for a backup guard in the league. So getting him and Rondo to back up Trey Young so where he doesn't have to do everything. You can play him off the ball more. And really, I think the cool thing to mention there is the fact that, when Steph Curry, and I'm gonna compare the two, Trey Young, Steph Curry, when Curry was shifted more to being able to play off the ball when Steve Kerr got there, he started to flourish a lot more than when he was always on the ball, always having to handle and go into pick and rolls. Curry had a lot better, you saw a different part of his game that helped develop and get him more open and help him be more effective. And I think that is what these signings of Rondo and Chris Dunn and even Bogdan really allow Trey Young to do, is go off the ball more and be more efficient and not have to be in charge of the ball all the time.
Yeah, because Curry really also impacts the game when he does not have the ball in his hands, and
Exactly.
Trey Young has the ball in his hands a lot, so there's not a lot of time where he can impact the game without the ball in his hands. When he does, it's like because he's dishing it out to someone to do something, right? They're not having to account for him in a play that, let's say, Rondo is running and finding open looks that they're running some for Trey Young. If they're not getting him the ball, they're getting someone else that's wide open because they're having to account for Trey. So yeah, I definitely think you get another playmaker involved. It eases the load for Trey, but also, it's a great role model. Trey is a guy who was second in the league in assists already, so knows how to dish the ball out, makes great plays, sees the court very well, and Rondo can mentor him in being able to run a team and distribute the ball. So I really love that pick. Bogdanovich, I mean, there's a reason he bailed out of Milwaukee, right? We thought he was going on the Bucks, but the reason he's out in Atlanta is because of that check he's getting now, and that's the only reason we're talking about him in Atlanta. So exactly why Atlanta, not a big market, the only way they can attract these kind of players is to end up paying them like that. So it's better than them sitting on their hands and doing nothing, right? So I really like the moves of being aggressive to get these kind of pieces to improve their team. It's not like they're going anywhere with Gallo. I don't think they're going to be a solid playoff projection. I think they might be able to slide in depending on how well they play. They might be able to slide in just because the East is falls off a lot. There are going to be some teams that are kind of surprising there in the eighth seed that can slip in, especially with the new playoff format. So they got a chance, but I definitely think that them making the moves puts them in that position that they wouldn't be in otherwise.
Yeah, I definitely see them making playoffs, if nothing else. Eighth seed, seventh seed, whatever they want to be. Like I think that's a really good squad now, and I think if nothing else, I think you had to make these moves so that Trae Young knows you're for real. You know,
Mhm.
he knows you want to try and compete and make the playoffs, and you're not only rebuilding. I think it's great, and you can always move. You can always, stretch Gallo or trade him to a contender or something along those lines.
He's a good shooter. He's a good maker. He's good. You get the ball in his hands. It's not like he creates a lot, but he can create his own shot in terms of like getting a shot off over anybody,
Yeah,
So that's a good guy to have on your team to get looks. So, you don't have Trey chunking the ball up 30 times a game. Like, you can get some good looks. So, yeah,
absolutely.
good polished, experienced player.
Now we talked a little bit more about having to overspend when you're not a free agent destination. And I think the mascot or the symbol of that this year is the Charlotte Hornets, paying Gordon Hayward $30 million a season for 4 years, $120 million to come play for the Charlotte Hornets. My immediate thought process is just, you didn't have to do that. Like, no one's going to pay Gordon Hayward $30 million to come play for them. And I don't think, I understand overpaying, but that almost feels like severely overpaying, especially when you just got out of Nicholas Batum's huge contract. And you got to assume that you want the same thing out of both players, right? You sign Nicholas Batum to finally take that leap, stop being a supportive player on a playoff team, and really go out and just be the star of your franchise. And Gordon Hayward, well, I feel like he's more likely to be the superstar than Nicholas Batum ever was. You just got out of that huge contract, and now you're going right back into this like purgatory of we suck and we can't do anything about it. What were your thoughts when Gordon Hayward, when the Charlotte Hornets did that?
I think that's a great example. While Gordon, I would say, is a more polished player, especially pre-injury, all-star caliber, and then post-injury, still looked like he could play good basketball. It looked like he just was not getting a lot of usage. It looked like he was like just a smart basketball player making the right reads. Wasn't looking for a shot. Was just making good passes, getting good ball movement whenever I watched the Celtics. And so, his numbers were not eye-popping, but they were efficient. And so you theoretically, I don't think that Gordon Hayward can return to his all-star form when he, signed with Boston and, can make that kind of not only stat line, but impact on a team. I do think that 30 mil is definitely overpaying for him, though. I agree with you. You could say inflation, size of contracts are going up. Tobias Harris last year when he got signed, I was still kind of like, what's going on here? But that kind of happens. There, like we said with Atlanta, there is no way that the Hornets were going to get Gordon Hayward unless they paid him a full bag for it. So, I see where they're going for trying to get a good free agent acquisition, pair with LaMelo, get a good season. I still kind of think that they pulled the trigger a little too soon. I think they might have been able to get I don't know if this is the right word, but I would say like a more like a higher prospect, like a more projected. I don't know if it has to be like a young talent necessarily, but like it just seems like you're taking too much of a risk with Gordon Hayward post injury unless you're really banking on him to get back to that all-star form or really be that second playmaker behind LaMelo on the team, which I hope Gordon Hayward can do. He's shown flashes of it post-injury, but I don't think that they can, 30 mil consistent, he better be posting up 20 a night easily. I think he almost averaged that in his comeback, so I don't think it'll be hard, but it's set 30 mil a year. I agree. I think he overpaid, but it's the only way the Hornets got a shot if they get a player like that.
I think you bring up a great point, and then it just feels like they shot too soon.
Yeah.
Right? Like usually this is a move.
Take a shot.
Yeah, usually this is like a third year of a guy that you really want to, whether you accept his team option or you extend the guy, right? Like you just got LaMelo. We don't know, with all due respect, we don't know if he's gonna, start developing quickly or slowly or what. But it feels like the move to say, look, we're serious about it. We wanna make the playoffs. And it just feels like I feel like they picked the wrong guy.
Yeah. Yeah, for their franchise and having a young guy in LaMelo and young players on their team with Devontae Graham, et cetera, and Bridges, whatever. I think that they should have pulled their trigger on a younger prospect. Like I don't want to compare these people, but just because we talked about him, like Bogdan, right? You take a guy who's younger, but can almost do the same kind of thing. I would feel much more comfortable paying him more money, younger in his career. I just think there's too much risk associated with Gordon Hayward and paying him that. 4 years from now, you're still paying him 30 mil. Whereas I feel a lot more comfortable with a guy like Bogdan, who hasn't reached the peak that Gordon Hayward reached, but has the potential still that I would say, they have the same potential to do, be, 20-point scorers, good, playmakers, but.
Absolutely. I think I literally, when we just finished talking about Bogdan, I was like, that would have been a great guy for Charlotte to spend, whatever you want to spend, 25, 27 mil a season on. You want to spend it on him, fine, cool. Everyone gets it. Young potential, pair him young LaMelo.
Like Buddy Hield, I think he's a good prospect too. You pair with LaMelo.
He'd be a good one too. There probably won't be a whole bunch of defense, but
definitely not.
I feel like you would watch the Hornets like every single game.
I already do.
You can if Malik Monk. I don't know. See what you can get for him.
He's what they were expecting, man. That guy. Feel bad because he is a good shot maker. Like he made some tough shots in Kentucky, dude. And he came in leagues, had a game winner or two, but I don't know. The injuries plagued his career so far.
Well, I think the jury is still out on him. Lou Will hit his stride late in his career. That's probably his NBA comparison if he hits his ceiling. So
he's a good playmaker, but just injuries.
Yeah, definitely not the playmaker yet, but yeah, I think I believe in Malik Monk. I still believe in Malik Monk.
Yeah, I thought he was better. Like when he was playing with Fox in Kentucky, he seemed like he was the guy. But yeah, fortunate.
Maybe you reunite him. Maybe there's a Buddy Hield trade somewhere in there. That was another thing. The Bogdan signing weirded me out a little bit because I'm like, you have Buddy Hield, and I would think of Bogdan as better than Buddy Hield. So I wouldn't, I wouldn't. Is Buddy Hield going to start coming off the bench now? Is he going to be a sixth man next year? Probably not, but. Why are you paying your sixth man now 20+ mil in Bogdan? So maybe there's a trade. Maybe I don't know.
Play them both, dude. Start them both.
You could do that. You could do that. I don't know how much defense is being played between that lineup, but yeah, that's always an option. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this snippet of our podcast, make sure you like the video and leave a comment on your thoughts on the topic we talked about below. Now, also, make sure you subscribe and click the bell icon so you don't miss any future videos. Also, if you want to watch the podcast in its entirety, you can find us on Spotify, which is linked in the description below with our Instagram and our Twitter and our TikTok, which you should all be following. Now, all you have to do is click the link below. Thank you again for watching, and we cannot wait to see you next time.